But this time was a little different. This time, this person did not want to go into the light. They had been brought there by some Native American spirits, and there was someone else that seemed to be like a mother or relative of some sort. And as my wife was talking to her, this lady was very belligerent. She said, "I'm a murderer. I don't deserve to go into the light. I am not going to the light. I killed my husband because he was a cheating bastard. Then I turned the gun on me and I killed myself. And I don't deserve to go into the light. I'm not going to the light." And that's the end of the story. And as soon as I concentrated on helping my wife to open the light, she just turned, didn't say a word, walked in the light, boom, gone. And so that's when we realized that we could do this work together.
You're listening to The Thinning. Let's see what opens up. We're coming together here because you have a story to tell, and it's a big one. So, what are we here to talk about today?
Well, basically, we had a very unusual thing happen to us. My wife and I lived on a piece of property, a large piece of property in Washington, Seattle, Washington. And we had talked about possibly moving to a warmer, uh, kind of more of a winter friendly climate. And as we were doing this, my wife began to receive dreams in her sleep that Native American spirits were wanting her to stay on the property and teach her how to do what's called psychopomp work, which is dealing with either living people that are dying or people that have died and haven't moved on to where they're supposed to go, which is into the light, as you know. And so that is where our story starts. And then I eventually became involved with it also. I was just kind of support at first, and then after we learned shamanism, I began to communicate with the spirits also through shamanic travels, and that's it just kind of changed our life totally because
I
we've
would imagine so. Yeah. So, just to start there from the beginning of your story. So, no prior proclivities towards dreams that involved spirits speaking to you or anything like that. Nothing prior to that, or
nothing. Yeah. When we bought the house about 15, 16 years earlier, I guess the neighborhood lore was that there was an Indian burial ground, a Native American burial ground that was on our property in the back. And we thought, oh, well, okay, that's fine. We're not going to bother them. I hope they don't bother us. And yeah,
this was part of the community outlook. People had already talked about it. People knew
yeah,
about it. People,
yeah.
this was, and you moved into a place. I moved into a beautiful townhouse development, which I found out after I moved into it was built upon a Kerr McGee factory that where there was all kinds of nasty chemicals under the
Ugh,
foundation of this
wow.
place. So
Yeah.
we all kind of take on things that we didn't expect when we become property owners, but that's an unusual one. And just, you heard this from neighbors, and did they express any concern? Did they try to warn you about anything? Did they,
No.
uh, it was just a fact of life.
Yeah, it was just, like I say, it was just neighborhood lore. Yeah, oh, by the way, there's an Indian burial ground on your property. And I said, well, has everybody uh, verified this in any way? Or did somebody find bones or artifacts? Or no, that's just the neighborhood lore. And nobody seemed to know where it came from. And it's like, well, okay. One thing that was interesting, though, is that the people that were there originally, before we bought the house, it was built in, I think, 1956. Uh, but the people that were there before us were there for a short time. They were only there for like maybe 9 months. They had come in and brought a bulldozer and completely bulldozed the backyard. And then shortly after that, the lady of the house started getting all of these nightmares, and I think it was because they had desecrated the property by bulldozing it, and they couldn't sell it. It was 3 years. It was on the market, and nobody wanted it because it was a fairly small three-bedroom, one-bath house, and it just didn't fit families. Everybody wanted 2 bathrooms. I had a construction company, so I enlarged it and made it more comfortable, but I thought that was really interesting.
So, and if you enlarged it, then you did a little bulldozing yourself, probably. Was there anything going on with that?
I
Anything with the alteration of the property in general?
Yeah, I asked, uh, just to cover my bases, I asked the spirits if they thought it was okay that I do that. Didn't get any response, and so I thought, "Okay." I didn't really do any bulldozing. I just added on to a little bit to the footprint of the building, basically. So I didn't really do a lot of, alterations in the back,
No
like
disturbing of the land.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's okay. So you set the scene for all of this pretty well, I think. Or at least as much we can do in an hour's time. And so your wife started. You were thinking about moving. You were thinking about, and you just wanted to, like a lot of us, we get tired of the cold,
Mhm,
and we want to go to a warmer climate. And then she starts having dreams.
exactly. Yeah. She started having the dreams.
And the nature of these dreams, were they frightening? Were they troublesome? Were they, kind? What was the spirit that you encountered or that she encountered in those dreams? How would she describe that?
They weren't frightening at all. In fact, they were quite kind, and they said that, they had decided that they wanted us to stay there, and they wanted to teach her how to do this psychopomp work, which is crossing lost spirits that are in the earthly realm or the in-between realm, the purgatory, whatever you wanna call it, uh, that didn't go into the light and were kind of, trapped here, I guess, because they didn't go into the light. And then eventually, what we found out later is the longer that you wait, the harder it is to find that light. If you finally do change your mind and want to go into light, you can't find it. So you get a lot of buildup of spirits here, and that's what the Native Americans were trying to tell us, that this is causing a problem, uh, probably mostly through people not feeling worthy or wanting to watch over or guide over or help somebody that was a loved one. Let's say a spouse or a child or parents or whoever they loved, they were trying to protect or guide, or I don't know what all that they were, what their motivation was.
Yeah. So I have absolutely no experience with anything like this at all. Except I think about my mom, who passed 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember just the thing that puzzled me, and as a member of the clergy, I've been with people as they passed
Mhm.
several times, it was rattling at first, but I came to, understand and appreciate the process, and find the beauty in it that is there, without getting, and I'm such a right brain kind of guy. Wait, which hemisphere is it? It's the I'm the rational, linguistic. I'm the guy that's got to
Mhm.
understand it all. And if
Mhm.
it doesn't fit into my understanding, then I can't really give it too much thought. So I didn't give it very much thought when I was with people who passed. I didn't have any kind of intuitive sense, but my mom always acted as though she was going to live forever, that she would never, she had I would just say that my impression of my mother was that she could not, grasp her own mortality at all. And is that what's going on with some people, do you think? Are you dealing with spirits who have passed, but they're just not ready to let go? Maybe it happened tragically or it happened too soon. I mean, what do you think is there any comparison that you can help me with in this experience with my mom and just knowing that she was just not I think she was ready to go and it was time, but she lived her life as though it would never happen.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it because we are eternal. We're made of energy. You can you can't like I think Einstein was said that you can't destroy or birth or create energy. It is just is. And our souls are made up of energy. And so if you look at it in that way, we don't really die in a sense. We are reborn each and every time that we come back. This is predicated on that you believe in reincarnation. If you don't believe in reincarnation, then it's you know you pretty much take the Christian line that we're born, we live, we die, we either go to heaven or hell, and that's end of story. But I think there's a lot more going on than what
Well,
Western.
very clearly, what's going to happen is going to happen, right? It's like we can construct all of our thoughts and systems around what we think is going to happen and what we kind of and I would say that, in the Middle Ages, theology was a science. It was like math, it was like if this, then that. And we base our predictions on the future based upon what our math tells us is going to happen, but we know that what's going to happen is actually going to be the thing that happens, and therefore, yeah, I just what's going to happen is going to happen. If whether you believe in reincarnation or you believe in one life and one and done kind of thing, what's going to happen is going to happen. I
So
don't know
what?
where I was going with that, but
Yeah. So what?
it
So do you have
just
a
seems
question in
like
there?
no, I don't. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's I apologize for not having a question in that. It's just something. But again, I'm trying to understand a little bit about what you think is actually going on when people don't when people hang around. What's and maybe that's a question for down in a few minutes. I want to I guess I should want to stick to the timeline and the story so we can more fully understand it. Your wife had these dreams, and then that provoked a conversation. Were you on board with the conversation? Were you like, "Yeah, dear, let's do that"? I mean, how did that go?
Well, she thought that she was going crazy to begin with.
Okay,
She said, "This is." I mean, am I schizophrenic? And I was a psychology major in college, so I said, "Well, you don't seem to be. You don't have the markers that that's what's going on here." She says, "Oh, so you believe me?" And I said, "Well, in light of the fact that there isn't other things going on right now, yes, I do believe you. I do think that you're getting some kind of contact from the other side, and they are asking you to do these things. They're not asking you to kill anybody. They're not asking you to do anything illegal or immoral or wrong in any way. So let's just see where it goes." And so that's what she did. And they taught her how to do this psychopomp work where you bring somebody that is lost into or where the light is and use your energy to try to expand it so it's easier for them to see then. And it's their own light, of course. We're not producing it. And then they were able to cross over into this light.
so there's a couple of things that I just flagged there. One is that the spirits taught her
Right.
how. How did
And they
how did that communication take
Well,
place?
that's a good question. And that's how I got on board with doing this work also. They would bring her spirits and they would say, "Okay, this person wants to go into light, but they don't know how. They don't know where how to
In
do this."
dreams or in meditation
It
or
started off in dreams and meditations, and she was always kind of a little bit psychic anyway. She always
okay.
knew things that I was like, "Wow, how'd you know that?" And she's like, "I don't know." And so she was always a little bit psychic. And so that's how it started off. But when she would receive what we used to call the tap, like somebody on your shoulder, bonk, 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 and what it feel like is, butterflies in your stomach. She knew that they had brought her somebody that needed to go into the light, and they kinda walked her through it. "Okay, you bring this person to the light, you let them see their ancestors on their side, and they're gonna be crying and talking to them and trying to convince them that this is where they need to go, that it's safe, that, this was God's plan for you to do this, and go ahead and go right in," and they usually did.
And they taught her, and then it became more natural. And then, you say that she would feel this feeling, she would feel
Mhm.
a tap on the shoulder,
Right.
and then how was again, I'm really trying to understand how the communication took place, and how, because what you're describing is like, it's like reading a book, pick up a manual and it's do these things. And how do you know that without the book, without the manual, without the maybe even a teacher? And this goes to one of my kind of big questions, is around religious experience, and how we come to know religious experience is this and this and means this, right? And what I'm hearing is a very direct experience that doesn't have a lot of kind of cultural or intellectual trappings around it. It's simply a conversation, but I don't understand how that conversation took place.
Okay. Well, how that conversation when you say there wasn't any teacher, there was a teacher. They weren't living, they were Native American spirits, and they said, "This is how you do this." And it started off in dreams, and eventually she was able to do it while she was waking. She would get the, visions in her her head, and a picture of what was happening. She could see this person in front of her. She could even talk to that person and say, "Okay, what's your story?" Because they usually wanted to tell her story of, and like I say, that's how I got involved with it also. We were out at the barbecue one night. She says, "Oh, I just got the tap." And I said, "Oh, better go take care of it. Somebody needs to go in the light." And so she was on the other side of the property. I was flipping some burgers and I was just watching her. And she was having a really hard time. She was like, she was physically talking to this person, although it's all psychic when you talk to these people. You don't need to say anything, but she was using that because that's just what she was used to. So she was having a really hard time with this person that, it was just giving her a lot of flack, was swearing at her, and she kept looking at me like, shaking her head. And I thought, I wonder if I can help. So I concentrated on opening the light, helping her open this light so this person would go in. And, all of a sudden, my wife had this shocked look on her face. She looked at me. She walked over and she says, "You're not gonna believe this one." And I said, "What happened?" She goes, and up to this time, it was relatively simple. We helped the people open the light, they go in, there was a lot of emotion, uh, tears usually, and, of happiness, and they were gone. And but this time was a little different. This time, this person did not wanna go into the light. They had been brought there by some Native American spirits, and there was someone else that seemed to be like a mother or relative of some sort. And as my wife was talking to her, this lady was very belligerent. She said, "I'm a murderer. I don't deserve to go into the light. I am not going to the light. I killed my husband because he was a cheating bastard. Then I turned the gun on me and I killed myself. And I don't deserve to go into the light. I'm not going to the light." And that's the end of story. And as soon as I concentrated on helping my wife to open the light, she just turned, didn't say a word, walked to the light, boom, gone. And so that's when we realized that we could do this work together.
I have known people like that. I once it reminds me of a man that I had as a church member who was a former Navy SEAL,
Mhm.
and during his time in the service he had killed several. He called it, the term for it was terminal ingress regress.
Ah,
Get in, kill someone, get out. And that he was tapped to take out some men who were guarding a radar station. He went in and he did his job, but while he was breaking this young man's neck, he looked him in the eye, and it shattered him, and he had to leave he ultimately had to leave the service because of this injury. He becomes a dedicated member of a congregation that I was part of, and he would just look me in the eye and say, said, "Yeah, well, I know I'm going to hell." It's like, "Wait, what?" He said, "Oh yeah, the things I've done in my life, I know. There's no hope for me. I'm not redeemable." I'm like, "Jim, I'm not sure about that." you know, and I really struggle with that, but he could not be convinced. And so, what I'm hearing from you is that that's a sense that maybe in some circumstances doesn't ever go.
well, it doesn't go away until you go into the light. Whatever phobias, whatever psychoses, whatever things that you have going on in your head, when you die and you don't go into the light, you're exactly the same. You are exactly the same. So you still have all the same problems, only unfortunately you can't do anything about it. You can't go see a counselor, you can't do anything. You're on your own.
This is so beyond my ability to comprehend
Yeah.
that I'm having a hard time even continuing with this. I feel like I'm in way over my head. So what happened next? What happened next? I mean, what? Where did this go from those early experiences?
Where it finally went was that we decided what we found was that there were some souls that wanted to go into the light, and they were being held back by other souls that didn't go into the light, and they were feeding off of their energy. So we used to call them spiritual vampires. And the Native Americans sent us some warriors that we could separate those people and let the people go into the light that wanted to go into the light. So that's eventually where it got to. But doing that type of work can be very dangerous. And so we decided not to do that anymore. So that's where,
Explain. How is that dangerous to you?
well, they can make you sick. They can, my wife ended up passing away, and I don't know if it was because of that or not. I can't say one way or another. It could have been, but we had shamanic friends that told us, don't mess with the dark forces or negative energy like that because it can have its consequences. And so I thought, well, we didn't really study about all this until way later, and we heard the same things from several other sources, books, the courses that we took that said, yeah, you probably don't want to do that if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to protect yourself. And so that is how we decided to change what we did, and we just worked on helping spirits cross into the light.
And so the work continued. Your wife continued in the work until she was unable to.
Yes.
Was it an illness? Was it
Yeah,
if I may ask? Yeah.
she got diagnosed with late stage breast cancer that she was unaware of, and it took her life. And that was in 2000, the year 2000, right about the COVID time.
And I'm guessing, because you haven't mentioned it, but I'm guessing that she didn't have any problem crossing over. That she
No,
already kind
she
of knew where
the
she was headed and knew how the everything worked. And
yeah, yeah. That's one nice thing about doing psychopomp work, is that You don't have to rely on hope. You know what's there on the other side. You know how beautiful it is. And she didn't really have any fear of death as a consequence. So she was able to transition very easily.
So, how is this how does this compare to people who've had near death experiences?
Oh, it's very similar. It's very similar because what happens when you have a near death experience, you kind of have a come to Jesus moment or whatever you want to call it, where you get to look at yourself from the top down and you get to see the whole panorama of what's really going on. Like I said, it's far more complicated. And you live, you die, you're in eternal bliss in heaven. That there's a lot more going on than that.
Well, I would hope so, and there are certain faith traditions where I'm from in the American South where it's just simply a matter of almost like carrying a membership card in a certain denomination. If you've had this certain kind of religious experience, or if you walk down the aisle to the altar and said a certain prayer, then it doesn't matter what you do in your life, you're guaranteed a spot in the great beyond. And there's a lot, just looking at it from a I believe that God is a God who is just first and foremost,
Mhm.
and I don't think of God as a dude with a long beard in heaven, and he's pulling strings and doing this kind of stuff. I really think about it about God is the only word I got, but that which is beyond anything else that is, and so if the universe is 14 dimensions, then God is the 15th, 16th, and 17th metaphorically. If the universe is made up of trillions of stars, then God is the trillionth and the next trillion. Um, and so that's not something you can really wrap your head around, but I think in the middle of all that, if God is love, and if God is, then there has to be justice, right? And any kind of get out of jail free card, can't really doesn't seem to play to me to be something characteristic of a universe that is ultimately loving and just. So that's why I'm very intrigued by the life review that so many people report,
Mhm.
and how that works and what the function of it is. My understanding, my limited understanding, is that people who have had near death experiences recount a life review. And not everybody, but many people recount a life review, and the characteristic of that is that you see everything you've done, every transaction you've made in your life, and you get to experience how that felt from the other person, from the other person's point of view. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
And so when you if you fired a bullet, if you were a soldier and you fired a bullet in warfare, some people report experiencing what that bullet coming back, what the person they shot would feel and experience as that was coming through, and that is part of this shaping that takes place after we die. And that's have you what's your encounter with that of thing? You've not had a near death experience yourself,
No,
right?
yeah. No, I haven't.
But you've seen this from another point of view.
Exactly. Yeah, and what you're talking about is karma. If you do something negative to someone else, you're eventually going to have to feel what that person felt, which is just exactly what you're talking about. So, I yeah, karma is a interesting way, and it ties in with the whole reincarnation thing. You know, what one of the things that we found that was really fascinating was that, like, for example, I was talking about this lady who did not want to go into the light because she killed herself and she killed her husband. And I remember my wife asking one of our Native American spiritual guys. His name was Joseph. And she said, "Do I really have to cross over these people that don't deserve it?" And he said, to you. He says, "To God, everyone deserves it. It doesn't matter how bad you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. You could be Adolf Hitler and you still deserve to go into the light. Everybody goes into the light unless they choose not to. And those are the people that we're trying to get into the light." And we said, "Wow, really?" He says, "Yes, because once you're in the light, then you go through the review that you were just talking about, like the near death people, and you're able to say, okay, well, what happened in your life? What went wrong? What went bad? How would you change it? If you had this to do all over again, which you will, what would you change? I mean, would you change from Adolf Hitler to being a minister or, to recompense for what you've done?
Yeah, that's
Would you
going from bad to worse, but
Yeah.
keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so, it's a very complex philosophical, question here, you know? Uh, if I
It doesn't necessarily sound like a get out of jail free card to me, though. It
it's
sounds
not
like
a
a
it's not a
process.
yeah, it's not a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
You still have to pay for what you've done, but you still get to go into the light, because I remember my wife talking about one time, she had asked our spiritual advisor, I guess, our Native American spiritual advisor, what happens when these people go in? And she said, or he said, when they go into the light, they're covered in this scales of black stuff that the light can't penetrate them. Once you go into light, all of that stuff falls off and you are with just a pure white soul again. So it's like you don't get out of jail free. You still have to pay some kind of recompense or atonement for what you did through the law of karma. But yeah, everybody gets to redo the mistakes that they have made in life. Either, well, I can't really say how because I haven't died and gone through it yet that I remember, because we're a tabula rasa. Everything gets erased every time we come in, and we don't remember anything. There's some people that claim to, and maybe they do.
So I find that interesting, the idea of scales that come off. One of the theories of consciousness that I find compelling right now is a certain brand of simulation theory, which is of course, the most popular version of simulation theory was in the movie The Matrix in
Mhm.
1999.
Right.
We're part of we're harvested for our bodies are for electrical systems by an alien race, etc. Not so sure about that. What I am growing more certain of is that there is a whole lot out there beyond our five senses.
Mhm.
There's a whole lot of stuff, people, beings, whatever, walking around in this room that I just can't see because my brain is a filter. My brain creates a simulation. My brain creates an experience of reality that is not. And we know this to be true. We go driving down the road and we see trees. We also could focus on the fact that each leaf of those trees is an individual thing and it has little veins in it, and as we see these trees whizzing down the road, we could potentially get kind of, we could see all of that. We could see everything that's in the trees, but we don't because it would be too much for our brains. So our brains
Mhm.
filter out most of what's going on, create this nice little home for us in this world. And then when that is no longer useful to us, it's I can imagine it would be like scales falling away,
Mhm.
like a coat of paint chipping off, to where suddenly the things that we couldn't see or were too much for us, that our consciousness is able to experience. Our consciousness, which is part of part of a universal consciousness, maybe even a singular incarnation of that universal consciousness. And so I love that image. I love that thought. That makes sense to this little feeble simulated brain, right? Um, so so then when you were on your own, after your wife died, and you were on your own, you took up the work as well.
I took up the work as well, and I studied about a system where you don't have to cross over spirits. The regular spirits are fine, but the dark spirits, that you don't have to do that. And it was a man named Daniel Four, and it was called Ancestral Wisdom. Uh, and he had a whole course on how to do this. And what you do is you summon your, he called it your well relatives, that had no issues, that were in the light, that could be of some help to you, and they're the ones that did the heavy lifting. So you didn't have to put yourself in jeopardy by dealing with these dark entities that were unhappy or unpleasant or could possibly harm you.
And then you took that practice up, and again, I don't mean to mock or make fun, but did you, was there some kind of shingle that you could put out and say, hey, I'm to the spirit world where I'm doing this work? I mean, how they came to you, I'm assuming.
They did come to us, and we asked them that, because you could actually talk to these people and they would tell you their story. And one time I remember asking these people, How did you find us?" And they said, "We just followed the vibration. We just followed the light." And that's how we knew that this was where to come. Because after a while, the Native American spirits stopped bringing us people. The people that wanted to cross into the light were basically coming on their own accord. And so we thought, wow, really? That was amazing to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like my wife's a resume writer, and she doesn't have to put out the word that she's a resume writer. People just find her and they come to her,
Yeah.
and it's. I think there is an analogy there. I wonder about it because I think that her magnetism is just a spiritual. She's hanging out a spiritual shingle in so many ways.
Mhm.
She projects this energy of being helpful and being a gifted storyteller, and it fits her work just perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to think that that kind of thing extends into the afterlife. That it really is a part of our essential nature, I guess. Um, Beyond just the material, trying to make a living and things like that. It's a way that our souls, our being attracts the thing that we need to
Mhm.
eat and sleep and to find meaning in life, to find the ways to help people. So I mean, absolutely fascinating, fascinating. Are there other people like you around you? Is there a network of people? Obviously, you're putting yourself out as for people to talk to on podcasts, but are there other people like you doing
Yes,
this
there
kind of
are.
work?
Yeah, they're usually involved with the shamanic community.
Describe a shamanic community. Tell me about your journey into that realm.
Yeah, basically how we connected is the Native American spirits suggested that they said, follow the way of the shaman. Well, we didn't, it's sometimes we don't understand exactly what they're saying, but my wife was doing some research after they said that to her, and we found out that there was an actual book called Way of the Shaman. And it was, exactly, I think I got it right. Yeah, I got it right behind me. Yeah, it was, and it was from an anthropologist called Michael Harner. I'll just show you the book there, and it was he was a anthropologist that was studying shamanism, and then decided, wow, there's really something here. This is not just for study. As an anthropologist, I think that I want to be involved with this, and so he started a foundation with shamanism, and it was a Michael Harner Institute, and he did an amazing job. He did all types of classes. He has classes all over the United States and all over the world, actually. And that is how we started taking classes for this, and we learned how to do shamanic journey work, and everything to do with shamanism. And he was also a kind of like a gateway to learning other avenues of shamanism. And so that's how we got involved with shamanism.
Has there been any growth in your work? Or I get not even I wouldn't use the word work. What have you built upon the things that the understandings that you had previously, uh, that have expanded you out into different realms of awareness and consciousness through doing
Yeah.
the shamanic work? Yeah.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah, we when you do shamanic journey work, you get connected to what is called non-ordinary reality, which basically means that it's a different reality. You were talking earlier about the tree and how there's veins and all this stuff going on that we're not even considering, and how there could be beings that are right next to you and you can't see them, and there probably are, and everyone that is around you that you can't see, they're just slightly out of sync with your energy. And so there could be fairies, there could be unicorns, there could be who knows what that are around you, other beings that are at a higher frequency than you are. There could be ancients that are live a really long time. I don't know. It could be aliens. There could be all types of creatures around you that you're not aware of because you're not at their frequency. They're running at a very much lower or very much higher frequency, and they're not in sync with you.
It's like tuning of an FM radio.
Exactly.
It's like, you've got this one frequency that you're used to listening to, but if you tune it down, you encounter different stations and so on. I'm really curious about, I'm I had a great question and I just lost it. So, but I am curious about the way, these encounters, how you can tune yourself so do you do that? Do you can you gain access to the frequency knob, and move into this different place so that you do encounter beings that you didn't know about?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I guess how I would explain that is that when you do shamanic journeys, shamanic travels, some people call them, you put yourself basically in a different frequency. And so, depending on whether you're AM, FM, shortwave, whatever, it depends on where you go with it. I mean, sometimes you may want to converse with ancestors or a spouse that has passed away or a child that has passed away. Sometimes you might want to talk to Michael the Archangel. Sometimes you might want to talk to Jesus. Sometimes you might want to talk to Muhammad. So in some way, on some frequency level, are you actually connecting with them? I think so. And why I think that is because many times I have asked questions that I have no sophistication at all, and I get questions back that I know didn't come from me.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people
I know
report
they didn't.
that. Yeah. So, is there how do you do it? How do you put can you give us a pointer or a place to start with how you start, getting in that place where you can adjust your frequency and start, reaching into other realms of consciousness?
Yeah, and other than shamanic journey work, part of how this all happens, how this all works, how this is all structured is your auras. We have auras that go from the top of our body. There's 7 major auras. There's more than that, but those are the 7 major ones. And the one that gives you the sight and changes your perspective of the world is your third eye, they call it. And it's in the middle of your forehead. And it's kind of a direct, if you will, connection to your soul. And your shamanic seeing. Your shamanic seeing is when you see something, like for example, the definition of a shaman is someone who can see in the dark. And so this enables you to see in the dark and see some of those other frequencies that you can't ordinarily see unless you really concentrate on it. Use your third eye, use your shamanic journey work, use your deep meditations, you know, do other things that I even some people use drugs to do that. Uh, and so it just depends on what you're using, what you want to accomplish, where you want to go with this, and what you want to have happen. Because your intention is really important too.
And there, on this podcast, I'm having a lot of conversations with people who, especially several people that I've connected with that were part of a they're religious clergy, and they were part of a Johns Hopkins study on psilocybin. And there are a lot of people that are talking these days about various drugs that are kind of, a quick bypass. They run right past all the barriers that we have. And what I'm understanding about DMT is that it's like boom, you're in, and you're blasted off into another realm, and you're there for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and yet you come back with a complete change, a complete, it's not just, wow, I saw some really trippy shit. It's not anything, it's not like that. It's like, wow, I just went somewhere and I came back, and my life is, after this 15 minutes, my life is no longer the same as it was. And that's borne out not just by the way they report it, but the way they live their lives afterwards. The
Mhm.
change that it brings about.
Yeah, it's it's
Is
it's it's just like a near death experience, basically.
Yeah. So is it cheating to take a drug to get there, or is there a downside to that, or because some people are saying, well, it's actually, one guy that I interviewed said that he reached the same place in the psilocybin study after about an hour that it took him about 8 days of meditation to get to on a meditation retreat.
Well,
Um,
I guess it just depends on your comfort level. I don't really like drugs. I've always been a sports person, so I have always had anathema as far as any kind of drugs. Uh,
I grew up in that time where, there was somebody who took one hit of something, smoked pot, and went into a coma. So that I figured that was going to be me. So I never messed around with stuff. Still don't. So very curious from the standpoint of trying to understand consciousness and what this life is all about. I think that's where I'm coming at. But you never went that way. Yes.
I was involved. I think it was after my wife had passed away. I was just exploring a lot of different avenues, and I got into hypnotherapy, and some of the people in my hypnotherapy said, "We have a person that you need to talk to, and she does medicated retreats." And no, no, kitty.
It's inevitable. Yeah.
uh, Always wants to block the screen.
That's right.
Um, And so, I got involved with those retreats, and they used a combination of they microdosed, LSD, psiloc which is psilocybin, and, there was mushrooms, the active ingredients in mushroom, and I can't think of the name of that, in a tea, and, that was very interesting. The only danger that I found with that, and it's the danger with any type of drugs that you do, is eventually I felt that the group was far more interested in the recreational, attributes of the drugs rather than doing any kind of in-depth study or finding out what's going on in your interior brain, your soul,
Because
and
that's
so that
hard
that
work.
was the only problem
Yeah.
that I found with that is, and I left the group because of that, because they started saying, "Oh, Mike, hey, why do yeah, we're gonna do this," and I'm like, "Well, what does that have to do with anything spiritual?" "Oh, it doesn't," and I was like, "No, I'm gonna pass."
All right. Yeah. We still seek our social connections, and we still try to lubricate those social connections in various ways. And I think that'll always be part of the human experience. And digging deep and trying to understand yourself and understand that's the hard work. That's no matter what you're doing, that's hard work. I don't care to do it very much. It comes to me without me trying all too often. So yeah, learning about myself.
Yeah, going
Uh,
through your dark night of the soul is no fun.
yeah, yeah, it's not. But yet, it seems to be, one of my grand theories is that none of us, none of we, when we're young, we think that maybe there's a way that we could live our lives that would help us escape all this pain and suffering that everybody else around us seems to escape. And then we find out, well, we did everything right, but everything fell apart anyway. And we experience if it's we have a wonderful marriage, but then we experience the loss of a child, or we have some kind of terrible uh, crippling disease, that cancer or something that comes along at an early time. We all suffer, we all experience. Is that something that you have kind of seen from the other side as well?
Yeah, definitely. But I unfortunately, and you probably deal with this far more than I do. People always say, "Well, how could a just and loving God have all this suffering and pain in the world?" But I think that suffering and pain is part of the journey. That is part and parcel with what we have to go through as human beings to get to the next level, to get to where we're going. And it's not like it's permanent. We're all reborn again anyway. So, but
It
the
has to
pain,
be. It has
yeah,
to be part and parcel. Otherwise, there's just they, you know, they would make no sense. It has to be part of the human journey.
it does. I mean, I wish that there was an easier, quicker, less painful way, but there doesn't seem to be. And I, I, I feel bad and I am compassionate for these people that are going through this, especially third world countries, Africa, South America, these places that are, like Iran right now. My wife is Iranian. And, it's just terrible for her to watch all of her countrymen because all her family's there. She's the only one that's in America. And it's terrible for her to go through this pain of what the pain they're going through. Fortunately, none of them had died yet. But, it's very difficult for her, but it's part of her journey.
Of course. Yeah. And I think in that case, our suffering is tied to the very thing which we're striving after in this world, which is love. If we deeply love, if we deeply seek love, then we will suffer. We will experience pain and loss when other people are suffering. Uh, so in that regard, I guess I can accept it. If I don't love, then I'm not really harmed by anybody else's pain.
Mhm.
But if I do, then I'm affected by it deeply.
Yeah, 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 definitely.
Well, I think we could go for hours and hours more. I just have a million questions. I might want to like, ring you up and revisit some of them as I learn and grow. But this has been fascinating. My big takeaway from this is, again, I have noticed a pattern among spiritual people that is, that they have an experience and they try to put a language to it one way or another, and that's either a traditional faith language to it, or they find a book that resonates with their experience, and then that becomes this whole layer of thought and structure around something that you really you can't structure.
Yeah.
You can't really understand it. And you've shattered that today, frankly, because you're talking about an experience that is completely otherworldly as far as I'm concerned, in any framework that I've ever considered. And you're talking about it in such a way was, well, it just, these teachers, they spoke to us, they recruited us, they came to us, they asked for our help, and they taught us how to do this. And that's absolutely remarkable.
It is.
Absolutely remarkable.
It's hard to believe. I mean, if someone told me my story and I was in their shoes, I would say, "Whoa, you need to go in a funny farm." You know,
Well, I mean, the obvious question is, are you crazy? Do you ever wonder about that? Do you ever think about that? And if you do, how do you reassure yourself that you're not?
uh, that's a very good question, and I have, uh, many times thought, "Is this just coming from me? Is this coming from my head? Am I just totally full of bullshit?" And I always come back to and, unfortunately, mainstream science does not, validate any type of personal experience. It has to be the scientific model. It has to be reproducible. They have this whole litany of stuff that they have to go through in order to reproduce it again. And if it's not reproducible, then it doesn't exist. And I don't think that is a very good fair way to really look at what's happening here. What's happening is our I mean, it no matter how advanced computers get, AIs, all of that stuff, there will never, ever equal the human as far as our senses go, and most of our senses we don't even use. But there is so much to the human being that it's gotta be God by design. I mean, the design of the human being is just phenomenal. I mean, like I say, we only use a fraction of our capabilities, and as our society gets more and more advanced, I think a lot of this is gonna come out that, wow, it's like going into the Mariana Trench. There's so much down there that we don't even there's creatures down there that we haven't even found yet. And it's the same thing with the human soul, with the human body, with the human psyche. There's so much going on. There's just our own bodies. There's we have the ability to turn off illnesses. We don't know how to do that yet, but we can do that.
Yeah.
And there,
Yeah.
there's yogis in India that do that.
Right. And plenty of people who have the experience of I was, again, in my tradition, it's I was diagnosed with this terrible thing, and then, my friends gathered around me and prayed, and then I went to the doctor, and I mean, I'm oversimplifying, I think, but you know the story, you know the narrative.
Yeah,
I went to the doctor, and there was no sign of the illness that I was diagnosed with.
yeah.
Much more nuanced than that, I think, but nonetheless, I think we're familiar with those kinds of stories. Yeah, it's so. How do we learn more? Where would you suggest us if we're intrigued by your story and your narrative? First of all, we can't just really hang out a shingle and have spirits come to us. I don't guess if we don't have we're maybe you're chosen for that work by them, or you're not. We could always buy a piece of property with a cemetery on the back lot. and I'm being facetious, of course, and I apologize for that because it's really powerful. What you're telling me is really, really powerful. But if we are seeking to expand both our understanding, our vision, but also our usefulness in this world, our capabilities to help, whether it's the living or the dead. What would be your suggestion? Where would you have me start?
Well, it sounds to me like you've already started, and awareness is 90% of getting there. So you only
Okay.
have 10% left.
All right.
I think the openness that someone has shows their maturity. And so if you are being open to wanting to know more about this, then you will. I don't know if it'll come to you in the way of Native American spirits coming to you and saying, yes, we want you to do this work for us, because I still have a problem wrapping my head around that whole thing. How are we chosen? Can this happen to other people? Can this be something that the world needs? Uh, was this all a grand facade for some other thing that's going on? I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is what I feel in my heart. And I'm a very intuitive person, and I use my heart more to make decisions than my brain. Because, like you say, we really don't even have the language to describe what's going on. And as far, I mean, we wrote a book about this, and I still don't have the language about how what happened with us. And so all I can say is, if I was going to suggest something for somebody, shamanism is a good place to start, and start doing shamanic journeys yourself and start asking some of these questions. And you will get answers. You will get spirit guides that will help you, and you will be able to make inroads in just understanding what in the heck's going on.
This has been incredible. Thank you so much, Mike. How do we get in touch with you? How do we find your work? You got a website? Anything? What can we?
I'm just
How can we?
yeah, I we had some problems with the website, and I'm just rebuilding it right now. But if somebody wants a copy of our book, because like I say, we wrote a book on this, I am giving it away, because it was never about making money on the book. It was about the Native American has asked us to write that to spread the word.
Well, we're gonna do everything we can to point people to your work and to your book, and encourage more conversations about this. This has been really, really terrific.
Your your vibration has been altered now forever.